Something massive is about to happen to the weather across this country. And I promise you, most people are not even close to being prepared for it. Right now, today, August the 6th, 2026, the atmosphere over the United States is sitting on the edge of one of the most dramatic weather pattern flips we have seen all summer. On one side of this country, a monstrous heat dome is cooking the Great Plains with temperatures approaching 115 degrees in some locations. On the other side, wildfires are ripping through more than 2 million acres across Oregon and Washington. And Portland was listed at one point this week as having the single worst air quality of any major city on the entire planet. And now, threading right through the middle of all of this on a powerful storm system is revving up from Canada that is about to send wave after wave of severe thunderstorms crashing through the Midwest, the Great Lakes, and all the way into the Northeast from this weekend through the middle of next week. We are not talking about one bad storm day. We are talking about a prolonged, multi-day, potentially significant severe weather pattern that meteorologists are watching very carefully right now. And I want to walk you through every piece of it so you are not caught off guard. Let me start by painting you the big picture of what is happening in the atmosphere right now. Because to understand where we are going, you need to understand the setup that is driving all of this. There is a massive area of high pressure, a ridge that has been sitting over the southwestern United States and has been slowly expanding its reach eastward and into the Rockies. Think of this ridge like a lid on a pot. Wherever it sits, it traps hot air at the surface, suppresses rainfall, and creates those brutally hot, stagnant conditions that we have been talking about for weeks now. This ridge has been relentless. The Climate Prediction Center is flagging a moderate risk of extreme heat for parts of the West, the Great Basin, the Central Rockies, and the Central to Southern High Plains from August 10th through the 16th. That is next week. That is not just this weekend. This heat is not going anywhere anytime soon for those parts of the country. But here is where things get complicated and where the weather pattern gets genuinely dangerous for tens of millions of people. While that ridge parks itself over the south and southwest, a strong area of low pressure is sitting up in Canada, and it is pushing a belt of powerful mid-level winds down across the northern tier of the United States. When you have that kind of setup, extreme heat and moisture being pumped northward out of the Gulf of Mexico on one side, and a strong storm system driving cold air and wind shear down from Canada on the other, you have created the perfect collision zone for severe weather. That collision zone right now is pointed directly at the Midwest, the Great Lakes region, the Ohio Valley, and eventually the Northeast. And the models are becoming increasingly confident that this is not a one-day event. This is a pattern that could produce multiple rounds of severe thunderstorms from Friday through at least Monday and potentially into the middle of next week. Now let me tell you what is happening right now today because there is already active weather occurring that you need to know about. There's a weak low-pressure system currently tracking across the Central Plains, and it is generating a risk of isolated severe weather today across parts of central Illinois near Springfield and back through southwestern Missouri near Joe Plain. There is also a marginal threat in southern Arizona and in the High Plains. The main concerns for today are isolated damaging winds, and large hail and flash flooding is very much on the table as well. There is also an isolated tornado risk in the mix, particularly near areas like Quincy, Peoria, and Davenport, Illinois. The Storm Prediction Center has actually scaled back the tornado risk area slightly compared to earlier outlooks, but it has not eliminated it. When you have even a marginal tornado risk in early August, that is something that deserves your attention because August is typically one of the quieter months for tornadoes and severe weather overall. The fact that we have this kind of activity now in the days leading up to the main event this weekend tells you just how charged the atmosphere already is. I want to be honest with you about today's setup, though. The instability values are not particularly impressive right now. We are talking about maybe 1,000 joules per kilogram of convective available potential energy in some of these areas, which is a relatively low number. The environment is messy. There's a lot of convective activity already out there, cluttering things up, and that makes it harder for individual supercell storms to get really organized and produce significant tornadoes. The bigger threat today in many of these areas is going to be flash flooding, not tornadoes. There's a slight risk of excessive rainfall stretching from Kansas City back toward Chicago, and the models are showing anywhere from a half inch to several inches of rain possible in many locations over the next 48 hours. The bullseye for the heaviest rainfall and the highest flood risk today and tomorrow is in northern Missouri. If you live in or near that area, please stay weather ARA and do not attempt to drive through flooded roads. Even a few inches of fast-moving water can sweep a vehicle off the road. Tonight and into tomorrow morning, thunderstorms are going to be widespread across a large area, including Kansas City, Springfield, and St. Louis. If you live anywhere in that corridor, you should expect a noisy night. These storms are going to be rolling through, some of them strong, and they will make sleeping difficult. By tomorrow morning, most of that activity should start clearing out, but Thursday is still going to see at least some isolated severe weather. A marginal threat exists for parts of the Northeast, including Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia, where a few storms could produce downburst winds and some hail. Oklahoma and areas of Nebraska and South Dakota are also looking at isolated wind and hail threats for Thursday. But let me be very clear about something. Thursday is not the day I am most worried about. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday are the days that have my full attention, and they should have yours too. Friday is when this pattern really starts to intensify. As that strong northwesterly flow from Canada begins to really kick into gear, scattered severe weather will become possible, stretching from northern Iowa and southern Minnesota back through central and northern Wisconsin. Damaging winds are going to be the primary concern as those powerful mid-level winds translate down to the surface along the strongest storm cells. But Saturday is the day that the GFS model is most aggressive about, and it is showing a setup that frankly looks a lot like a significant severe weather day. The ingredients are coming together. Adequate moisture streaming up from the south, strong wind shear from the northwest, and enough atmospheric instability to support organized severe thunderstorms. We could be looking at all hazards on Saturday, meaning damaging winds, large hail, and yes, tornadoes across parts of the Midwest. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, these are the areas I'm watching most carefully for Saturday. If you live in these states, I would not be planning any major outdoor events without a solid weather backup plan in place. And then Sunday arrives and the pattern does not let up. There's uncertainty about exactly where Sunday's activity will be most focused because it depends on where a low-pressure system sets up. If the models are right and it settles somewhere near Nebraska, then Sunday's worst weather would likely be centered across Iowa and Nebraska. But if that low tracks a little differently, the severe weather corridor shifts accordingly. That is the nature of forecasting several days out. We know the pattern is going to produce severe weather, but pinpointing the exact geography with confidence takes a few more days. Monday brings yet another potential round, and the models are showing a particularly intense pocket of upper-level winds over Wisconsin and Michigan on Monday. If severe weather organizes in that setup, it could easily reach significant intensity. That word significant is not one I use casually. Significant means we are talking about widespread, long-track damaging wind events, large destructive hail, and potentially strong tornadoes. I want to put all of this in context for you because August severe weather gets overlooked. People associate tornadoes and big outbreak events with April and May, and they mentally check out by midsummer. That is a dangerous assumption. History has shown us repeatedly that August can deliver incredibly violent severe weather when the atmospheric pattern cooperates. And right now in 2026, the pattern is cooperating in a way that we have not really seen since earlier in the spring season. The combination of that strong Canadian low, the powerful northwesterly jet stream, the heat and moisture being pumped north from the Gulf, and multiple days of these ingredients staying in place creates a prolonged window of threat that extends well into next week. Keep that in mind. This is not just a weekend story. By the middle of next week, we could be looking at yet more rounds of storms working through the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. Now, while all of that severe weather is unfolding across the northern and central parts of the country, the Great Plains are going to be dealing with something entirely different and equally dangerous: extreme heat. The heat dome that has been building over the southwest is going to surge its influence into the central plains by Friday and Saturday. Areas of central Kansas could approach 105 degrees by Friday. By Saturday and Sunday, some locations in the central plains could be flirting with temperatures near 115 degrees. Let that number sink in for a moment. 115 degrees. That is not just hot, that is deadly. The Climate Prediction Center has already issued a moderate risk of extreme heat for the central to southern Great Plains and the middle to lower Mississippi Valley running from August 10th through the 16th as well. Meaning this heat is not a brief event. It is going to bake portions of this region for well over a week. What makes extreme heat so dangerous compared to other weather hazards is that it does not look dramatic on radar. There's no spinning vortex, no lightning bolt, no wall of water. It is invisible. It just sits there and pushes your body harder and harder until something breaks. Dew points across the southern plains are going to be in the mid to upper 70s, which means the heat index, the combination of temperature and humidity that reflects how hot it actually feels to your body, is going to be staggering. Heat indices above 110, possibly even approaching 120 degrees in some locations. When the air feels that hot, your body's ability to cool itself through sweating becomes severely compromised. Heat illness can develop in minutes, not hours. If you have any friends or family in the Central Plains, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Nebraska, please check on them this weekend and into next week. The elderly, young children, outdoor workers, and anyone without reliable air conditioning are at serious risk. There's also a secondary hazard that comes with this heat over the plains' rapid onset drought. The Climate Prediction Center is specifically flagging an enhanced risk for rapid onset drought across parts of the central and southern Great Plains in the Ozarks region. With below normal precipitation and above normal temperatures forecast for the next 2 weeks, the soil moisture that was already running low in these areas is going to be stripped away even faster. For farmers in this region, that is an alarming signal. Crop stress is going to be significant, and when soils dry out to that degree this quickly, it sets the stage for additional dust events and even an elevated fire risk back across the plains. Speaking of fire, I cannot move on without talking about what is happening in the Pacific Northwest right now because it is nothing short of catastrophic. As of today, there are 49 large wildfires actively burning across Oregon and Washington. Sister Joe, these fires have collectively burned well over 2 million acres across the region, surpassing the historical August peak well before August is even a week old. In the Spokane, Washington area alone, 3 separate fires burned through roughly 8 square miles of urban and suburban neighborhoods, destroying more than 700 structures, including homes and businesses. Over 5,000 residents have been displaced by the fires in Washington and Oregon combined. 950 firefighters from across the country are battling just one of these fires, the Big Grass Fire in southeastern Oregon, which has burned nearly 3,600,000 acres and remains only 35% contained. These are not small fires. These are landscape-scale disasters. The air quality situation tied to these fires has reached truly shocking levels. Portland, Oregon had its air quality index reach 160, which is in the unhealthy range. And at one point on Wednesday morning, IARE ranked Portland as having the single worst air quality of any major city tracked globally. Think about that for a moment. Not the worst in the United States, the worst in the world. Worse than cities in heavily industrialized or densely polluted regions. Portland was number 1 on the list for the worst air quality on the planet. Wildfire smoke from these fires has also pushed into western Washington, with dozens of cities reporting unhealthy to very unhealthy air quality readings. Seattle has been dealing with hazy skies. Boise, Salt Lake City, all seeing smoke impacts, and because of the upcoming pattern change with a dry, cold front moving through the region on Friday and Saturday. Gusty west winds are going to increase again, which unfortunately means the wildfire threat could be elevated yet again over the weekend. The smoke will shift around, but the fires themselves are not going anywhere fast with these conditions. The wildfire smoke is also responsible for the hazy skies that people east of the Rockies have been noticing over recent days. If you are in the Midwest or the Ohio Valley and you have been seeing that milky yellowish haze and reddish sunsets, that is wildfire smoke from Oregon and Washington being carried east on the upper level winds. It is making for some dramatic sunsets, but it is also reducing air quality across a very large part of the country. And for people with respiratory conditions, asthma, heart disease, or lung disease, it is genuinely a health concern, even far from the fires themselves. Let me come back to the severe weather picture and give you a very clear timeline of what to expect so that you know exactly how to plan. For the rest of today, August 6th, the active weather zone is central Illinois, southwestern Missouri, parts of southern Arizona, and the high plains. Flash flooding is the main risk with isolated severe storms. Tonight into Thursday morning, heavy rain and thunderstorms are widespread across Kansas City, Springfield, and St. Louis. Thursday afternoon brings a marginal severe weather window for the Northeast and isolated activity in Oklahoma and the Central Plains. Thursday still clears enough for the next setup to begin building. Friday, when the severe weather risk starts to become more organized and moves into northern Iowa, southern Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Saturday is the highest risk day of the entire stretch. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan are the epicenters for damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes. Sunday brings another round with the exact location depending on where the low tracks. Monday brings yet another potential round with strong upper-level winds over Wisconsin and Michigan. And the middle of next week could bring additional rounds of storm activity that we will continue to track. For the Midwest Ohio Valley and Great Lakes residents, here is my bottom line for you. This is a multi-day severe weather pattern, and complacency right now is your biggest enemy. You need to have a plan for where you will shelter if a tornado warning is issued in your area. You need to have a way to receive weather alerts, whether that is a no AAA weather radio, your phone's emergency alert system, or a trusted weather app. You need to know that a basement is the safest place during a tornado. And if you do not have a basement, you need to get to the lowest floor of your building in an interior room away from windows. You need to be aware that these storms can produce very intense, fast-moving, damaging wind events that can bring down trees and power lines across large areas with very little warning. Do not wait until a storm is on top of you to start making decisions. For the Central Plains, the message is about heat, survival, plain and simple. Drink water constantly, not just when you feel thirsty. Stay indoors during the hottest part of the afternoon if at all possible. Check on neighbors and family members who are vulnerable. Do not leave children or pets in vehicles under any circumstances. Understand that heat illness can escalate from discomfort to a life-threatening emergency in a very short period of time. And do not be hesitant to seek medical attention if you or someone near you is showing signs of heat exhaustion or heat stroke. Confusion, lack of sweating, despite extreme heat, rapid heartbeat, and loss of consciousness are all emergency warning signs. For the Pacific Northwest, please check on friends and family in Washington and Oregon. If you are near any of the active fire zones, follow evacuation orders promptly and without hesitation. Do not wait to see how close the fire gets. For those dealing with smoke limit time outdoors, wear an N95 mask if you must be outside. Keep windows and doors closed if you have air conditioning, and use air purifiers indoors if available. The air quality situation is not improving quickly, and we need another day or two before the smoke begins to shift with the changing wind pattern. This is a country right now dealing with 3 simultaneous and serious weather crises: extreme heat, devastating wildfires, and an incoming severe weather outbreak. None of these stories are small, and none of them can be ignored. I will be bringing you continued updates as we track all of this through the weekend and into next week, if conditions warrant it. Live coverage will be available this weekend, and I want you to be here with me for it. Stay subscribed, make sure you have your notifications turned on, and above all, please stay safe out there. The atmosphere has a lot to say over the next several days. Let us make sure you're listening. Let me take a moment to go deeper on the science of what makes this particular pattern so unusual and so potent, because understanding it will help you appreciate why forecasters are treating this stretch so seriously. The setup we are dealing with right now is called a split flow pattern, and it is one of the most reliably storm-producing configurations the atmosphere can produce in the summer months. Here is how it works. When you have a strong ridge of high pressure anchored over one part of the country, in this case the Southwest and Great Plains, the jet stream, which normally flows in a relatively straight band across the country, gets forced to split around. One branch of the jet stream dives south, and another branch accelerates northward around the top of the ridge. That northern branch is exactly what is driving the strong northwesterly flow that is going to be pushing down across the Midwest and Great Lakes from Friday through next week. When the jet stream buckles like this and that northern branch starts raking across the upper Midwest, it creates powerful wind shear at altitude. And wind shear is the engine that organizes severe thunderstorms into supercells. A supercell thunderstorm is not just a big thunderstorm. It is a highly organized, long-lived, rotating storm system that is capable of producing large hail destructive winds and the most violent tornadoes on Earth. Supercells form when the wind changes direction and speed with height. That is the wind shear we have been talking about. And this causes the updraft inside the storm to rotate. When that updraft rotates strongly enough, it can produce a tornado. And when you have a powerful, well-organized jet stream crashing into a region where warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico has been pooling, you have created a supercell factory. That is precisely what this weekend's setup is beginning to look like, particularly for Saturday. The GFS model, which has been our most aggressive and bullish guidance for the weekend severe weather, is showing multiple lines of organized thunderstorms developing from Friday through Monday, with the Saturday event potentially being the most significant of the entire stretch. Now, I want to talk about something that does not get discussed enough in weather forecasts, and that is the danger of the overnight and early morning severe weather events that come with these pattern setups. A lot of people hear about a severe weather day and they think about afternoon and evening storms, which is when most people are awake and aware and able to respond. But in this type of pattern, where you have a strong low-level jet stream pushing moisture northward overnight, severe weather does not stop when the sun goes down. In fact, some of the most dangerous weather events happen between midnight and dawn when people are asleep and not monitoring conditions. You can lose power, which means your phone charger is no longer working. Your weather alerts may not reach you, and you may not even realize a tornado warning has been issued for your county. This is exactly why I keep emphasizing that you need a no AA weather radio, a battery-powered one sitting in your home. It will sound an alarm even at 3 in the morning if a tornado warning is issued for your specific county. No internet connection required, no power required, just batteries. Please do not overlook this. The flash flooding risk during these events is also something I want to emphasize because it tends to be the weather hazard that people underestimate the most, and it is consistently one of the deadliest weather killers year after year in the United States. When you have multiple rounds of thunderstorms moving through the same corridor over several consecutive days, the soil becomes completely saturated. There is nowhere for additional rainwater to go. So when the next storm rolls through and drops another couple of inches of rain, that water has to go somewhere, and it goes into the streets, the underpasses, the low-lying neighborhoods, and the creeks and rivers that were already running high. This is how flash flood emergencies develop. This is how roads become impassable. This is how cars get swept away. The rule is simple. If you drive up to a flooded roadway, you turn around. You do not try to judge the depth. You do not try to cross. You turn around. Every year people die because they thought it was shallow enough or they thought their vehicle was big enough. It never is. I also want to talk about what a prolonged pattern like this means for power infrastructure. Because with multiple rounds of damaging wind events spread across the Midwest and Great Lakes over 4 to 5 consecutive days, the cumulative impact on the power grid could be significant. The first round might bring down trees onto power lines in Minnesota. The second round stresses the repair crews who are already working. The third round hits before restoration is complete. Over a multi-day outbreak, the number of people without power can climb into the hundreds of thousands across a wide geographic area. If you have a generator, now is the time to make sure it is fueled and operational. If you have medical equipment that requires power, please contact your utility company in advance to be flagged as a priority restoration customer. And if you have elderly neighbors who rely on electrically powered medical devices or air conditioning to manage health conditions, please check on them proactively. Do not wait for the power to go out and then try to figure out if they are okay. Here is the absolute bottom line for today, Thursday, and through next week. Across the Pacific Northwest, the wildfire crisis continues with 49 large active fires. Air quality reaching hazardous and world worst levels in some cities, and a pattern change this weekend that will bring gusty winds and renewed fire spread risk across the Great Plains and moving into the Mississippi Valley through mid-August. Dangerous and prolonged extreme heat with temperatures approaching and in some cases exceeding 115 degrees deadly heat indices and a serious risk of rapid onset drought. And across the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and eventually the Northeast from Friday through at least Monday and potentially into the middle of next week. A prolonged multi-day severe weather pattern producing multiple rounds of storms capable of damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes with a significant severe weather risk, particularly on Saturday and Monday. 3 crises running simultaneously across a huge swath of the country. Stay informed, stay prepared, and stay safe. We will have more updates as this pattern evolves, and I will be right here tracking all of it with